Good morning and welcome to Counterpoints. Happy Wednesday. Crystal, we apparently dressed for like a baptism.
Twinsies.
Yeah.
Totally accidental, but we're just already like mind melding on the same wavelength here.
We're in sync. Although we'll probably disagree like 9 times out of 10 today, maybe. I don't know.
Possibly. We'll see.
It's Wednesday. Crystal feels a little out of sorts in the Counterpoints suit, doesn't know what to do with herself.
I am a little confused. It
She
feels
keeps calling
like
me Sagar.
it sort of feels like I'm doing like Dream World breaking points. Like the set is like a little bit off. It's like not quite the right name. The host is a little bit different. But no, I had my kids' kindergarten graduation yesterday. So Ryan filled in for me yesterday. I'm here today. So it all works. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's a big day.
Lots going on. We have Ron DeSantis making it official tonight. We've got all kinds of early previews of what the campaign is looking like, the pitch to voters, the pitch to donors, all that good stuff. We also have debt ceiling. I don't know that I call them updates. Maybe like non-updates.
Yeah, updates about the lack of updates.
That's pretty much where we're at. Yeah. We also have some new numbers about how much the American people are already not feeling great about the economy. And of course, the whole debt ceiling showdown makes that even more precarious. We've got the first state to outright ban downloads of TikTok, and TikTok is suing to try to push back on that. That's a very interesting debate there. And Fox News under fire. This one I wanted to talk to you about because I don't have a sense of whether this is like real fallout for Fox or whether this is like a blip on the radar. But reporter Mary Margaret Olohan revealed their sort of like behind the scenes woke policies with regard to gender identity in particular. And there's a bit of a backlash. So we will go through all of that.
Lots to talk about.
Yes.
Well, let's start with the big news of the day, which is that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is going to announce that he's running for president tonight at 6 p.m. on Twitter in a conversation with Elon Musk and I believe David Sachs as well. He's going to be moderating the conversation. Pretty fascinating. DeSantis is going to follow that up with an interview on Fox News with Trey Gowdy. They're going to release a launch video, and he's going to start visiting those states, early voting states, Iowa, South Carolina, New Hampshire, over Memorial Day weekend. So it's a really big day, obviously, in the Republican primary field. Crystal, the Twitter move is fascinating.
Yeah.
Nobody saw that part coming. It had been rumored that DeSantis was going to launch on the 24th on Wednesday, and then it comes out of left field yesterday. He's going to be announcing in a conversation with Elon Musk, moderated by David Sachs on Twitter. I think we can put the first element up on the screen here. This is a video. This is the launch video, part of a launch video that I think this was from yesterday, right?
Yeah, this was from yesterday. This was shared by his wife as like a little bit of like a quick teaser and getting people to text in, like, you know, to sign up for their list. So let's take a look at what that is.
They call it faith because in the face of darkness, you can see that brighter future. A faith that our best days lay ahead of us. But is it worth the fight? Do I have the courage? Is it worth the sacrifice? America has been worth it every single time.
So that's what we got so far. Go ahead and put the next piece up because this has some of the details about the Twitter thing, and then I want to get your thoughts, and I'll tell you what I think. So they say DeSantis will launch his presidential bid with Elon Musk. They're doing that like audio chat thing feature that Twitter has, which I've actually never really used, but is popular among a lot of people. He is going to be in that conversation with Musk, moderated by David Sachs, who has been very supportive of him in the past. He's one of the hosts of the All In podcast. I mean, okay, so there's a couple layers here. First of all, you know, part of the reason that the right was excited about Elon taking over Twitter was the idea like, oh, we're going to make it a neutral platform, neutral free speech platform. I mean, the free speech part is long out the window. The neutral part has also been out the window, but just makes it really clear here. And I was just thinking about, like, if the shoe were on the other foot, if it was like Jack Dorsey launching Joe Biden's campaign on Twitter, the right would be freaking out about how unfair this is. And I mean, to me, it's just a revelation that whatever Elon said about his principles, free speech, that was the core of what he was all about on Twitter, it increasingly looks like he's just using it as like a multi-billion-dollar platform to advance his own political project and agenda.
Well, see, this is really interesting because he was retweeting Tim Scott's like announcement stuff this week too, and I wonder if he partially sees this as a business opportunity. Now, whether that's better or worse is an entirely fair question, but is he saying I can use the Republican primary to create intrigue and drive people to Twitter by using it as a platform where some of these debates happen? So whether he becomes fully on board with the DeSantis team, that I think would be that would be genuinely like, yes, you're using this platform in a way that's like just your own. But
already when you're the one launching the campaign, whether he outright endorses him or not, of course that's going to raise a lot of questions about like, okay, well, how are you using this influential platform among elites at least in order to help the candidates that you like? And I think that's, you know, like, that is a very reasonable question. And we don't have the insights into Twitter. It's not the transparent place that he argued it would be. We also just had the specter of him basically, you know, intervening on behalf of Erdogan to help him get reelected in Turkey. So that is still ongoing. They went to a runoff. So there's that piece of it. The other piece of it, Emily, though, is I just wonder what you think is a political move of DeSantis launching on Twitter, because Biden won the Democratic primary and ultimately the general election with a very famous mantra, which is that Twitter is not real life.
Right.
One of the knocks on DeSantis is that he has trouble like relating to people and just sort of like interpersonal interactions. The other knock on DeSantis is that he's way too online. And this is it is a very way too online, very insular move, in my opinion, for him to start his campaign this way.
Yeah, I would think it was really, like, it actually kind of reminds me of something we see on the left a lot, which is just super, super online behavior that drives candidates to make questionable decisions,
right?
Because you're trying to placate a very particular slice of the public that's actually fairly out of step and like culturally different than the broader public. So I don't disagree with that at all. I actually think it's interesting your point about free speech and neutrality and the conservative ambition for Twitter as being a neutral place is fascinating, because free speech used to be our standard of what neutrality is, and now conservatives see one institution, you know, all the other institutions, YouTube, whatever, aligned against them. And so one institution comes along and flirts and says, I can do even better than just free speech. I can, you know, create a space for conservative speech and promote conservative speech in the so-called like business Silicon Valley mainstream. And everyone's like, hell yeah. And it's totally different than what you said. Like, it's what you said is exactly right. It's totally different than just a neutral free speech platform.
Right.
And people want that. Conservatives want that. And I think that is, to an extent, telling. But it also speaks to that, like, total desperation for just something, one place that, you know, is going to be supportive and is going to let conservatives say what they want, et cetera, et cetera. That is totally different than free speech.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and there were always, like, obvious, this was clear if you were looking for the signs from the beginning. I always talked about Mike Lindell launched his quote-unquote free speech platform, and it was like, but no taking the Lord's name in vain, no cursing.
Right.
No, like, it had a very specific set of rules for what he was defining as free speech. And so this has always been about, all right, who's going to have control over the censorship, not really over free speech, because, again, any idea that this is really, truly a free speech platform, I think, is out the window. Let's talk a little bit more, though, about DeSantis and what his pitch is. Put the next piece up on the screen here, because I think this is kind of fascinating reporting from CNN, and we've seen a little bit of this New York Times reporting as well. This is, to be clear, what DeSantis is putting out to these outlets. And the headline is how DeSantis plans to jolt the GOP presidential primary and seize back the narrative. A lot of this, Emily, appears to be his pitch that he is more electable. And also there was an interesting addition in this reporting that one of the things he's leaning into is the fact that if Trump were to get elected, he's instantly a lame duck because he can only serve 4 more years since he's already served 1 term as president. So his pitch to the base and specifically to donors is, if you elect Trump, if he's able to get in there, number one, I think he's less electable. So if he gets in there, though, he's instantly a lame duck. You have to go back to having none of the advantages of incumbency and start from scratch the next time around. Whereas if I get elected, then you're much more likely to have 8 years of a conservative in the presidency. So that's part of what he is leaning into in terms of the case he's making.
That's a really good point. And again, this gets into the question you asked about what kind of campaign Ron DeSantis is going to run. I actually think Trump was very online, and that's part of the problem in 2020 is that, like, he gets so in the Twitter bubble, so in the social media bubble. One thing that's interesting is there was a Harris poll this week. It was conducted in mid-May. It found Elon Musk has, like, relatively high favorability, higher than Trump, higher than Biden. He's at 47%. Ron DeSantis is in third place at 45% in that poll. Then it's Bernie Sanders with 42%. So I think there is, like, Elon Musk is probably more than just a super online figure in the rest of the country. There are people who genuinely really admire him for reasons we may disagree with and counter, but he is a fairly popular figure nationwide. Obviously, just a plurality, not a majority in the favorability race there. But it's going to be really tough, I think, for Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump both to be in this race and to have to resist the temptation of just running for a segment of conservative Twitter or Truth Social or whatever it is, because now the entire political class lives and breathes online. And it just through osmosis, like, soaks into everybody's perception of voters. And that is just so, so dangerous. And so it's definitely a challenge for Ron DeSantis moving forward. He's obviously, like, the Twitter, a lot of his legislation in Florida has made a lot of conservative Twitter very happy.
Right.
He's pretty popular in his own state, but whether or not that translates on a national level, a very different question.
What do you think of his electability pitch? Because I see two issues with it. Number one, it's not clear to me. I think donors definitely care about it, no doubt about it. And he's going to have plenty of money behind him. That's not going to be an issue. But it's not clear to me, the Republican base, that this is anywhere close to their number one priority. The other issue for him, I think, with the electability pitch is in that same Harvard-Harris poll that you were mentioning, Republican voters are very divided on which one they think, between DeSantis and Trump, is more likely to defeat Joe Biden. So it's one thing if it's really clear to people, like, oh, this is the guy. If you want to win, this is the guy. And then you go to that secondary question of, okay, but is that the top priority for the Republican base? But they don't see it the way that he sees it.
Right. No, that's a really good point. And here's another, we can put A3 up. This is another part of his pitch. It actually kind of echoes of Trump here. DeSantis envisions shaping 7-2 conservative majority on Supreme Court. That's a Washington Post headline. And so remember how crucial Donald Trump's Supreme Court, his Supreme Court promises were in the 2016 primary and then in the general, when you had all of these, like, never Trump conservatives saying, I'm not voting for this guy. But then he rolls out the Leonard Leo list of judges that he would put on the Supreme Court, and that solidifies the support of the conservative movement. Here you have DeSantis saying, we're going to shape the court to a 7-2 conservative majority. Obviously, that would be the goal of a Democrat president if they wanted to, if they were in a similar situation, be the goal of any Republican president for the most part, unless it's someone very moderate. But that he is specifically already prioritizing the court is very telling. But that's, again, you have this question of Donald Trump having about 30% of really solid support in the Republican Party. 30% of Republican voters are Trump voters. They may only vote Republican because of Donald Trump. They may have voted Democrat before, and now they vote Donald Trump. That is an unmovable, probably 30%. What DeSantis' pitch has always been is that he, in Florida, is appealing to those voters while also appealing to suburban voters and while also continuing to peel off minority voters, Hispanic voters. That is going to be really difficult when Donald Trump is at that 30% and the rest of the field is split between Tim Scott, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, whoever the hell else decides to get into this race. Yeah. That makes, most Republican voters voted against Donald Trump in the primaries in 2016, which is something that people forget a lot. And now, if you're splitting it up again and Donald Trump is not going to lose that 30%, they love him and they probably, a big section of them are probably like old Union Democratic voters who are not going to vote for another regular politician. There's just nothing you can do to winnow away at that number. And that's a real challenge for anybody, let alone DeSantis.
Yeah, and I think, and it's not just that he has that solid 30%. There's like 80% or 90% of the Republican Party that's open to voting for him. So he's, in a much stronger position than he was in 2016. And then you have all of these candidates dividing the field. I think in terms of DeSantis's electability pitch, another complicating factor for him is the fact that he just signed into law the 6-week abortion ban, which, if part of your pitch is, hey, I can appeal to suburbanites in a way that Trump has completely turned them off. Well, you have just completely muddied that issue because this is the issue that abortion has become the most animating issue among suburban voters in particular, suburban women in particular. So I also think that undercuts the electability argument. But, I want to make the best case we can for him. I think that he has already shown, I think his team has already shown a lot of competence. They've shown themselves to be really nimble, in terms of Iowa, that visit he had recently where Trump pulled out and DeSantis then shows up and is kind of like a little jab at Trump. And ultimately, the pace of this race could be set in those early states. There's reporting this morning about how they want to use their money to really flood the zone in terms of organizers into Iowa, New Hampshire, and the other early state primaries and caucuses. So that's their theory of the case. And, right now, I think it looks like a real uphill climb. But, it's going to be a long primary season, and you never know what's going to happen, Emily.
You never know what's going to happen. And my quick final thought on this is that the guy is extremely popular in Florida. That has generally been a fairly organic. He barely won his governor's race against Andrew Gillum. It was just by a hair he won that race. He then started, governing in a way that was very alien to a lot of people in the Republican Party, has been, in the sort of Republican establishment circles, very controversial, the things that Ron DeSantis has done. But in his state, his popularity is high. He has passed a lot of legislation, and has a good messaging strategy on that legislation that makes it popular, where, the media says, don't say gay. Well, Florida is genuinely split on whether or not they like that bill, despite what the media says. It's actually fairly popular, way more than the media says. And so to be able to sell that despite the media noise saying one thing, to be able to have a messaging strategy that cuts to what voters think and what they want to hear, I think that is a sign that he's definitely has political talents that people probably underestimate on the national scale. So it's going to be a very interesting primary, to say the least, and an important primary. So as we figure out where the Republican Party is going.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll be watching closely his announcement tonight. I think Sagar and I might jump on and do a little instant react. So stay tuned for that later today.
You're making Sagar work today? On a Wednesday.
Sagar he's nonstop, man. He lives in that suit. He's just throws on the casual clothes over it so he can rip them off at any moment and be ready to jump in front of a camera. So, no, he's unstoppable. Hey, guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now. And Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.